We got ourselves a pretty significant OTA here that's going to change the meta quite significantly. We got some significant nerfs to some major meta players and some buffs to cards that are obviously being underutilized. Those are all good things. But before we dive into those numbers, I want to talk about this statement that was made by Second Dinner in the start of the balance note. It's kind of funny. People often skip the kind of opening paragraph of the balance, and I actually thought it was pretty interesting as a look into their design philosophy in terms of balance. Let's read this. I don't usually read things for verbatim, but in this case, let's do it. We've enjoyed a diverse metagame in February, with every week featuring more than 10 decks above 50% win rate, but none of those decks crossing any of our balance thresholds. That kind of is incredible, as we expect ebb and flow across these numbers to occur naturally. Other card games might stand pat here as long as they could, but we manage Marvel Snap a little differently. We believe a core part of the fun is solving a metagame that's on the move every week and exploring revisions to existing cards. That means we'll pursue change for its own sake occasionally, and this week is such a case. This is a very interesting statement. They're not just seeking balance, they're seeking an interesting metagame. And while that might seem like, well, it's the same thing, Alex, balance equals an interesting metagame, and that can be true, especially when things are completely out of whack. But for Second Dinner, what they're saying here is balance does not always translate into fun, and they want to make sure the game is fun. And so this is a pretty interesting standpoint here, because yeah, we do have some outliers in balance, and they are getting nerfed, quick heads up. But at the same time, I think providing some cards with the opportunity to kind of rise in viability is important. Like, we've never had a move meta, for instance. What if you buffs move to the point where, for a few weeks, it's really popping off? We're kind of seeing that with discard. Discard's kind of getting annoying, but it's been several weeks, 3 weeks of Hela being one of the top performers in the meta, and no one's it's not like what Galactus was, or what old, actually the original iteration of Thanos was, where it was completely dominant, or Shuri. Shuri was a nightmare to deal with. It's not quite there. It's more of an inconvenience than a meta breaker. So I really kind of wanted to showcase this because people might have kind of glanced over it. I'd be interested in your opinions down below in the comment section, but this seems very fair to me. The idea of saying, okay, what if we actually, give a card a little extra, for a month or so to see if it really shakes things up. Like a card like Spectrum. What if we give Spectrum, a little bit extra? Silver Surfer as an archetype has been feeling really weak. What if we give it a +3? If it breaks it, we OTA it back down, right? I like the idea of creating these fresh meta games, which keep people engaged. And honestly, for people like me, I like to play and experiment with new types of decks and archetypes. And every time there's an OTA, it feels like the design landscape for deck building opens up again, right? So anyways, I want to touch on this briefly because I think the design philosophy of Second Dinner is worth noting, because when you don't really understand this or don't follow their design philosophy, then some of the changes can come as a surprise. This video is brought to you by Tempest, Tower of Probatio. Tempest, Tower of Probatio has fast-paced and engaging gameplay, which is perfect for players of all skill levels. Craft a deck from its over 300 unique cards, and each deck can be a reflection of your preferred playstyle and personality, and is sure to test your skills. Outsmart your opponents with the game's innovative ban phase, which allows you to block their top strategies to give yourself a tactical advantage. Once the bans are in, you pick one of 3 heroes to start the game, which provides a unique experience over traditional card games. Empower the tower to flip the game state and propel your side to victory. Heroes also possess unique hero skills, which allow you to flip the tide of battle to your advantage and outplay your opponent. Effortlessly continue your journey in Tempest Tower of Probatio season after season, thanks to its seamless progression that will always have you starting from where you left off. For all new Tempest players, you are guaranteed a free deck trial ticket on the first day as a login reward. This is a one-time only chance and allows users to copy other players' decks and play games for a limited time, even if they don't own all the cards. Use the link in the description and in the pinned comment down below to get started playing Tempest Tower of Probatio today. We have Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock goes from a 2/0 to a 5/4. Same effect. If you're winning a location, you draw a card. But what's interesting here is that now he has some additional power, but also some additional cost. The only traditional use of Adam Warlock was in Bast-based decks where you can make him a 2/3, and that was one of the absolute best ways to play Adam Warlock. But even then, he was getting cut from those decks because he was a little too greedy. As a 5/4, I mean, he's stronger than Leech, I guess, but the effect isn't quite as impactful against your opponent as Leech, but it sets up combo potential. So I guess they're trying to be very careful, as they note in the developer note, that they're like, hey, listen, a card draw in Marvel Snap is very tricky. It's one of the most powerful effects you have in the game. It's not like, you know, Pokemon where you have like 50 cards or 60 cards or 40 cards or whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's like you have a ton of cards in Magic and all these other games. You can draw cards, you can mill cards, you can do all these things. In Marvel Snap, there's 12. So each draw is much more significant, right? So you got to be careful with how you draw, because you don't want like every combo deck to be running Adam Warlock and Crystal so that they can consistently draw their pieces and just like OTK everyone all the time, right? Statistically, this card's a nightmare. 42% win rate, a negative 1/9 cube rate, almost no meta share. No one was playing this card, so very interesting to see this buff happen. But I don't know. Would have 2/1 been too powerful? Just throwing it out there. I don't know, 5/4. I don't know if this is enough for Adam Warlock. We go to Darkhawk. Now, this is a massive, massive, massive change. Glenn mentioned that Darkhawk has been consistently near the top of the win rate charts internally at Second Dinner, which is kind of interesting because like our win rate stats that we get aggregate from the community shows a 51.8% win rate, and that kind of implies that our stats aren't always correct. Surprise, surprise, maybe the internal stats might be a little more accurate. With 100% data, we get a little bit of a skewed data set. And so you look at this data, cube rate of 0.4, meta share at just under 5%, doesn't seem problematic. But he's been one of the absolute top. Since the nerf to Blob, he has been the top performing card. And obviously this is a major change for Zabu as well. Like Zabu players, and I mean, I'm a huge Zabu fan, and Zabu now takes a significant hit because the Zabu based Darkhawk package of Korg, Zabu, Rock Slide, Darkhawk, etc. I mean, it's a straight up kick in the pants. There's no other way to say it. You do get some power compensated here, but no longer can you play Darkhawk on turn 6 with a Mystique or with a whatever, right? A Shang-Chi. It was that turn 6 combo play that made Darkhawk so powerful, because you could protect it from Shang-Chi, from Enchantress, from Rogue, because you were holding it for turn 6 because of Zabu making your 3-cost cards. You can play Shang-Chi and Darkhawk. This change makes it a little more difficult, much more analogous to like a Ronin, and the risks that it takes to play Ronin or Devil Dinosaur, and how they kind of sit there waiting to get hit most often than not. So Darkhawk, very significant change, and it might be necessary to shake up the metagame. Like right now, the top performing shell in the game is a Darkhawk based Annihilus deck. So we'll have to see. This is a pretty huge change, and I think it does hit Darkhawk very significantly. And again, now you're looking at it being analogous to Ronin and Devil Dinosaur. We go to Forge here. This is huge. Now, Forge statistically on its own, surprisingly low stats, right? Negative cube rate, really sub 50% win rate, very high meta share. Why? Because he's activating Destroy. This is not so much, in my opinion, targeting Forge specifically, and it is because he's so popular, but I think what this does is changing him from a 1/1 to a 2/2 again. It takes a little bit off of Deadpool, right? Like they're trying to kind of rein in Destroy a little bit, and reining in Forge by effect takes down a little bit of power off Deadpool. So I think this is a major attack vector for making Destroy a little less, we'll say, powerful. The change to Hulkbuster was just replaced by, let's add more Forge, and let's add, like they found, savvy Destroy players found ways to replace the Hulkbuster's power into the Deadpool. So this is much more of a direct hit. And considering that it is a targeted effect, it makes sense to change it as it is. So Forge, a very significant change. This is pretty meta significant considering it's a 12% meta share, but specifically in the Destroy archetype, a pretty big kick in the pants. We go to Ant-Man. It's a beginner card. It's a 48% win rate. It's a massively negative cube rate and almost actually surprising meta share at 7.3%. This is actually a cool change. I like this. I like this a lot. Now, Ant-Man is constantly being munched on by Killmonger. And you know what? That's okay. In early kind of pools, the Killmonger, the armors, and all that, the meta is very different. But as you kind of go into pool 3 and beyond, and you start collecting pool 5 cards and start completing your collection, Ant-Man starts to wane in popularity and viability. This added power is significant. A 1/5 with the condition is pretty damn good. And obviously you have the Spectrum synergy as well. So that's a 1/7. That's phenomenal, honestly. If you Wong Spectrum, it's a 1/9. Hey, sign me up. So I do like this change a lot. I mean, this is not the kind of change that ever breaks the game, right? Like it's, as they kind of mentioned, like, is this actually going to break anything? No. But this is good. I like this. I'm very happy with this change. I'm glad Ant-Man's getting a little bit of love because he is, I was kind of surprised he has 7.3 meta share. I was going to say he's underplayed, but like, who's playing Ant-Man like this that much? I mean, I was just playing Ant-Man on stream, actually. We were doing a pool 1 ongoing deck. That was a lot of fun. We've got America Chavez, and this kind of comes in line with the change to Forge. Basically, they took Forge as a 1, brought it to a 2. Chavez was awful, awful, awful. One of the worst cards in the game. Look at that negative 4/3 cube rate, 41% win rate on our stats. Just awful. And then what they've done is they've moved it from Chavez from a 2/3, kept the same power and the effect, and made it a 1/2. This allows it to be a little more mana efficient while still providing the power of its effect itself. So we'll have to see if this helps, right? So Forge and Chavez switching spots. Most notably, you're thinking, hey, Alex, why don't, if I'm a destroy player, why don't I just put Chavez in instead of Forge? Well, it's not a targeted ability, right? You don't really know what's in your deck. I mean, unless you're playing... what's the duck's name? Howard the Duck. I almost forgot what the duck's name was because no one fully said Howard the Duck. If you're playing Howard the Duck, then maybe you deserve to hit the extra card there. So yeah, Chavez got nerfed pretty, not really got buffed, I guess. But anyways, this got nerfed. LOCKJAW, a very significant nerf here. And I gotta be honest with you, I like my nerf better. So this is a nerf to a 4/5, and it basically just reduced the amount of times you can play because now it's a 4 cost. It has Zabu synergy, I guess. But what it does is it makes it so that like it's harder to just start cycling things through because now you have 1 less turn. But here's the thing, it's still just LOCKJAW, it's still just good. The change that I had suggested on the Snapchat was keep it as a 3/2 or 3/3 or whatever, but every time you cycle something through, give it a -1 or a -2. Actually debuff it every single time LOCKJAW does a swing. This kind of idea came to me because I watched the series Inhumans on Disney Plus, and it was awful. But outside of that, one of the key kind of threads in the story was that LOCKJAW would get tired when LOCKJAW teleported, because that was LOCKJAW's ability. LOCKJAW would teleport people around, and so actually letting him rest and heal was part of the story. And I think it would be really fitting from a canon perspective if LOCKJAW got a negative buff every time he rotated something through. That would actually help. I feel like that would actually mitigate the amount of power he's putting out. Second Dinner chose to do this approach where it's like, let's just reduce the amount of times he can actually roll. Remember, he used to be able to roll multiple times per turn. Now it's only once per turn, and now he's a 4 cost, which reduces the frequency of being able to play it. This also makes, I almost forgot her name as well, Black Swan. I'm very forgetful today. Black Swan more relevant to Thanos players because now you can Black Swan on 3, and then you can LOCKJAW on 4 with a stone, right? So that is kind of important. Black Swan by effect getting a buff to this from this change to LOCKJAW if you're looking to play that same kind of play pattern. Regardless, a very interesting meta changing nerf here. Had to happen eventually. I'm glad they weren't too heavy-handed with it, but again, I kind of like my change better. Swordmaster, very simple change from a 3/6 to a 3/7. It just simply wasn't worth playing Swordmaster when you had targeted discard. Like, why play Swordmaster when you can play Lady Sif, when you can play Corvus, get extra energy, and have that, like, Hellcow we just play Hellcow, I guess, right? Swordmaster with this randomness of the discard, it needs some additional power, and that now it's a 3/7. That's, like, huge. Gladiator's a 3/8. Swordmaster is now massive. It makes me wonder if there's, like, a Surfer deck out there. I know this is a bit of hopium here, but I wonder if there's like a Surfer deck with like a Cosmo and Swordmaster, so you can like Cosmo and the Swordmaster take the power but don't do the effect. You can also use the Cosmo into Gladiator if, like, for instance, you're playing against an opponent that's like playing LOCKJAW and you know they have Chonky Boys in their deck and you don't want to pull them. Kind of interesting idea. I think I'm gonna try and play that. But anyways, like a stats-based Surfer deck. But regardless, this card was awful. 36.5% win rate. It's just so bad. It needed something, and an additional power ain't gonna hurt nobody. Here we go to Vulture. This is actually a pretty interesting change. We kind of joked about before, like, why not try to make move meta at least for a little bit? Take some chances, right? And I mean, I guess most of us don't have move kind of very high on our bingo cards for decks that are going to take over the meta, but maybe we should give it a shot, right? I'm also noticing here my text is wildly off center. Now that I see it, I just can't unsee it, but I'm not going to stop talking. Just try not to look at, don't stare at it, damn it. But I do think that Vulture's buff going from a a 3/3 that gets +5 when it moves to a +6 when it moves is significant. It actually still keeps it under Shang-Chi range. You only need to move it once. It's a 3/9. Like, it's just Heimdall with 3/9. Heimdall recently got buffed too, so that's a lot of aggregate power being added to the archetype. And yeah, I don't think this is going to really bother anybody, but like, move is so hard to play and so tricky that, like, just the appetite for playing Move doesn't quite feel there, right? So I think it's a pretty cool change to Vulture, and Vulture is a legit like stat stick, right, for Move, so it's kind of cool to see. Regardless, guys, I do hope that you enjoyed this analysis of the OTA. Please hit the like button if you like to support the content. Check out this other video that I got up here on the screen, and we'll see you in that next Marvel Snap video.